First story, just because I get to say Russia hacked a video call.
This story was interesting to me. I'm like, they might as well have been on like mini bikes with walkie-talkies in their hand, going over like sensitive, war type data. You're telling me they were on a Webex call?
I can't really talk. She might be listening in.
Can I try out this yogurt?
Buster, two things. First of all, I think it might be time for you to move out, you know? And secondly, you don't want to take any chances with yogurt, Mom. Just let her throw it out.
Hello, who's on this phone?
Digital signage as a service, Russians hacking video conferencing, and lobbying the government for the betterment of all AV. All that and more, next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 656, recorded Friday, March 15th, 2024. Enterprise AV. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have got this week, Erin Mayer Moran. Not only is she from Johns Hopkins University, but she's also the HETMA chair. How are you?
Doing good. Just kind of trying to do all of the things before I officially take over as chair.
When do you officially take over for chair?
After Infocom. Yep, July 1, officially.
Why not before Infocom?
Well, just because I'm trying to wait until I'm finished with my master's degree. So.
Well, that's a good excuse.
Yeah.
I thought Joe was like, no, I've got Infocom. Yeah, all right.
No.
All right. Also with us is Joel Carroll from Mersive. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Always good to see you, man.
All right. And last but not least, a young man I've been trying to have on. I finally, I emailed him is what I did. Bill Fonz from PTG. It's not like he was hiding from me. How are you, Bill?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am well. Bill has a fantastic podcast you need to listen to. We'll talk about that at the end as well. First story, just because I get to say Russia hacked a video call. Yep, that's right. The Russian spies are believed to have intercepted a sensitive conference call between members of Germany's Air Force discussing the ongoing war in Ukraine. Also on there were some members of the British military. The call, which took place on Webex, that's an important part, has raised concerns about the security of the platform and the German military's communication practices. We're not going to get into the second part of that. This is more about Webex and video conferencing security. The incident has highlighted the importance of secure communication channels for military and government officials, particularly when discussing sensitive topics relating to ongoing conflicts. Also led to questions about why these were discussed on Webex or any other video conferencing platform. To be clear, there are ways to secure your video systems. We don't know what was or was not done in this particular instance, but authenticating outside participants before allowing them in your system is an easy first step. I say that. We at CTI are a Teams house. I've used Zoom almost since it came out. All of these platforms have what's known as a lobby or a holding place or a holding pen. When somebody comes in from the outside, they have to click and say, oh, I'm going to let in Joel Carroll because I know Joel, but I don't know Jim Bob. So I'm not going to let Jim Bob into our conferencing system. Aaron, I'm going to start with you on this. Generically, we have been talking about security of AV for a long time. How do we keep our systems secure?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of confirms just how important regular security audits are, like making sure that using strong passwords on things and following proper protocols when it comes to how we're handling these sorts of calls and data in general. We, especially being at a university that does deal with government contracts with research and whatnot, previously this did sort of enter us into a bit of a gray area because there was a point where we could only use hardware solutions with, codecs that were point to point, like there was nothing, no little snoopers in between. But now that we've moved to software codecs more, it definitely has become more of a concern where it's maybe a little bit more, the onus is put on the end users to make sure that they're following how things need to be done, as opposed to it was never something they had to worry about nearly as much because they knew that the call would be secure. So now it's kind of like making sure that everybody in the chain is doing everything that they can to keep it locked down.
Yeah. Joel, same kind of question here is how do we keep, whether it's our video conferencing system, it's our, collaboration devices or anything on our network, how do we keep them secure?
A lot of it starts just from it's two places. One, the manufacturer has a huge responsibility of testing everything again and again and again and again, whether it's at the hardware layer, software layer, whatever the case may be. And I mean, I was on a presentation with you not long ago, or another AVWeek not long ago. We were talking about some of the things from China and what that means, right? So it even goes down to the chip level nowadays, unfortunately, where we have to be very cautious on how that type of stuff is built. But then when we get and have those discussions at the customer level, Aaron mentioned security audits. That's key. We're going through one right now at Mersive. And it's not just security audits of how I'm communicating outward, but what are we doing with all our data internally? If somebody was to get into our systems, what can they find out about Tim Albright, whether it be personal or credit card or whatever the case may be? We all have to take a responsibility. So never did I think I'd be worried about the stuff like I am today. 10, 15 years ago, it was easy. Don't plug it into the internet. Then we don't have to worry about those things. Nowadays, everything's connected. So anything provides a potential point of concern when we're working about this. So making sure you're doing the right selection and you really tried and true and test everything before you put it into a system, that's going to be key. And then once you do that, you've got to test it, as Aaron said, often. We run into issues. People will not do software updates on our product until they vetted the software, even though it's just a small bug fix, but they won't roll it out, especially at banking institutions, until they vetted that it has not created any additional, potential security loopholes.
Bill, this story lets me say use one of my favorite quotes, not from myself, but from a young lady by the name of Teresa Payton. Teresa was the first CTO, the first CIO of the White House under Bush II. And she did a presentation at PSNI a number of years ago where she said, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when someone will try to attack you. So as more and more devices, and I'm not even going to say more and more devices. There are fewer devices. It's easier to name devices that don't have an RJ45, that don't have a network jack in AV than there is to say there are more and more devices. There all are. So as our entire industry is getting on the network, how the heck do we safeguard ourselves?
First, I mean, this story was interesting to me. I'm like, they might as well have been on like mini bikes with walkie-talkies in their hand, going over like sensitive war type data. You're telling me they're on a Webex call, a web-enabled platform for video conferencing? I think this is like underscores the reason why you have, just because those things are available. There's also 2 cups and some yarn you can attach, and that's available. But there's a more secure way to have a meeting that's that sensitive. And I think if they engage the right channel partner or integration company, they belong in a SCIF, in a safe, secure room without any access whatsoever to the outside. And for anybody listening who doesn't know what a SCIF is, I couldn't tell you the acronym, but I know it's a very important room that you have to have all kinds of credentials to get into. And just because you're the best AV tech on the planet doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. I mean, there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to do that. But it underscores the need as the landscape changes out there, there's still a need for an authentic AV integration of some kind to recommend what to do, not just what to buy.
Yeah, it really to wrap this story up. There was a number of years ago, this was back when I was still pretending to be a programmer, and I was doing a system at a secure facility, and we quite literally had 2 different Cisco codecs, and we had to program a button because when they went into SCIF mode, as Bill was talking about, it literally wiped all the information on the secure one and then made the connection. And then the general or major or whoever it was making that call typed in the IP address or the codec of the one they were making the call. And then when they went out, it wiped it again. So yeah, Bill's right. There are ways to do this without, exposing yourself to security risks.
Before you jump, Tim, I just want to throw something in on this, which to Bill's point, your point, we can look at all the technology and do security audits and everything that we need to. But the biggest issue in this story, and usually anywhere, always starts with an individual somewhere. And in that story, they should have known better, or maybe, they didn't turn something on. But everything with security has to initialize by training your team, making sure they know what to do, what not to do. Even at McDonald's, if that's where you work, you have to be able to train your team enough to know what to look for.
I envision that person that did this is doing a TikTok video right now, very upset that that's about to be disrupted too. That's how I'd like to see the situation.
I have a feeling the person that did this is making their living off TikTok now, because I have a feeling they're fired. And let's not get into TikTok and the U.S. government this week. I have opinions. Next story, CEDIA goes to Washington. Key personnel from CEDIA recently met with U.S. senators and representatives in Washington, D.C. to advocate for crucial changes that would benefit current and future generations of professionals in the field. Meetings, which took place on March 6th during CEDIA's Day on Capitol Hill, focused on two primary initiatives: expanding 529 savings plans to cover workforce training and credentialing programs, as well as creating a dedicated integrator, quote-unquote, classification within the standard occupational classification, also known as the SOC system. CEDIA CEO Daryl Friedman said the outcomes we seek will not only open doors for aspiring professionals, but also elevate the status of our industry as a whole. The Day on Capitol Hill, Friedman referred to as the first annual quote-unquote event, signals CEDIA's commitment to ongoing advocacy efforts in support of the CI channel. Now, this is a longer story because AVNation has interviewed Avixa CEO David Labuskes half a dozen times. And my own personal opinions, I'll tell you at the end of this, but we interviewed Labuskes about Avixa's lobbying efforts. Mr. Labuskes has pointed us to their joining with existing organizations' efforts. Labuskes did highlight in an email back to us this week, highlighted the fact that Avixa has signed on or intends to sign on to the SOC code when it is open for further comment. And they are a supporter of the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act through the American Society of Association Executives. Mr. Labuskes has also pointed to the cost of lobbying by Avixa, period. Avixa is not the CTA, the Consumer Technology Association. They have a bigger budget. Mr. Labuskes says that if Avixa was to become a full-time lobbying organization or a lobbying group or have a lobbying arm, the cost associated with that, I think in the interview he said, he would have to charge corporations and manufacturers roughly $50,000 to $100,000 a year for membership. So, I'm not a math guy. I don't know whether or not how accurate those numbers are, but lobbying is not cheap. Joel, I'm going to start with you on this. Just generically, whether it's CEDIA, whether it's Avixa, whether it's NSCA or whatever organization, what should we expect of our trade organizations when talking about lobbying our governments?
Well, it's the one thing that I took away from this one specifically that interests me the most is what you had said a moment ago, the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act. Finding ways to help people. We talk about this often, right? How do we get more young people? How do we get people into the industry? There's a cost that's associated with that, and sometimes substantial for the professional certificate programs, things along those lines. If I concentrate around that portion of it first, if we find ways that people, maybe these, a lot of people have saved these 529 plans for years. The kids decide that college isn't for them. I'm a parent of one of those. He can't utilize those funds because he went right into the AV world and he's learning, on the job. But if there was a way for him to utilize those funds, take Avixa courses or, whatever the case may be, that elevate his career a lot more readily using money that was set aside for that. So if there's ways that we can find opportunities to use those 529 funds or find ways to get those funds by the government approved in other ways for, tax deductions, whatever, I think it's huge. That to me was the thing in the story that read the most because I live it today, with my oldest son. And I was impressed that was part of the idea of going and having that discussion personally.
Bill, what was one of the biggest things you took away from CEDIA's trip to DC?
Well, there were two things I saw. One, it's a conversation we've been having sort of offline and, cocktail receptions, things like that with both Dave and Avixa, as well as NSCA, which have a lot of like business related implementations going on. But he's right. The cost of lobbying is like tremendous. We're all in the wrong business, by the way. But that said, I think there's going to, I'd like to take the same question like a couple of years from now. The growth within our industry is going to almost double in a short period of time, like in 5 years, what it did in 15 years. If you go back and you look at the stats. So I don't know, will we have the money to do that a few years down the road? Maybe. I have to look at that. But to me, the interesting story here is why they were doing this legislation. They're looking for a home for the people that get displaced through disruptive technologies, which is a fancy way of saying, hey, AI is coming, everybody run for cover. And to me, AI is nothing but a hodgepodge of different applications right now that are sort of at this war fighting each other to who's going to be relevant, a lot like the internet used to be. Who would have thought that Google of all companies was going to end up on top when you had CompuServe and Yahoo and these companies that were once these Goliaths that are like nothing. I see the same situation here. And for me, looking through the AV lens, it's kind of the same thing as AV integration, a whole bunch of different disparate products that don't work together very nicely. And an integrator comes along and makes them all dance to the same music. I see AI as the same thing. So instead of running from that, turn around and run towards that storm and buckle up and become relevant and help people navigate that. I don't think we should be in line looking for a new job. I think we should double down on the one we have.
I would tend to agree with that, but I'm also very bullish on AI as well. But I like that. Aaron, same kind of question. Regardless of, I'll pick on HETMA as well. HETMA is not a lobbying group, but whether it's HETMA, whether it's NSCA, whether it's AVEXA, what should we expect from our trade organizations and the groups that we belong to when it comes to lobbying on our behalf to our various governments?
Yeah, I think that if advocacy needs to be done, like who better to take that on than some of our the trade groups that we belong to. I do like the direction that at least CEDIA is going in with the by advocating for the 529 changes and for the adjustment of classifications and stuff, because but Bill was really right. Like a lot, I think, of the future, or especially the near future, is going to be about reskilling and upskilling. And if we can take advantage of the 529 plans that a lot of parents have that maybe weren't able to be used necessarily, this is a perfect opportunity and use for that. And but at the same time, I am fiscally responsible in my position, and if our dues for or our membership for a trade organization would triple, quadruple, potentially more, to allow them to do this sort of lobbying work, I would have to potentially rethink, my ability to be part of that organization, as much as I could see the benefit of it, for depending on the size of the business or organization. Like it's, that is another thing that it'd be tough to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Bill's right. We are in the wrong business.
You reminded me of the fact that, there's, is the juice worth the squeeze? That cost, depending on how much it would be. I take a look at what John Laughlin, did with CTI in training up and comers and finding a way to get to students and bringing them into AV and what does that cost look like as opposed to writing a check so somebody in Washington can take a really expensive lunch. That's the difference, right? So, and what do we get more out of embracing, is it the timing to do this, or do we already have ways we can leverage existing bank accounts, existing tools to accomplish the same thing?
I'm totally going to steal that phrase. I've never heard it, so I am stealing that. Is the juice worth the squeeze? All right. Last story, digital signage as a service. Samsung has entered into a partnership with Quest Technology Management, a US-based IT integrator, and Talaras, a technology brokerage, to provide digital signage as a managed service to small and medium-sized businesses. The innovative offering will be made available exclusively through Talaras technology advisors, making it easier for SMBs to access and implement cutting-edge digital signage solutions. As part of the collaboration, Quest will provide endpoints, installation, cloud, SaaS integration, and carrier services to support the displays through a single agreement. Bill, I'm going to start with you on this. When you look at this, like what does this story say to you as far as digital signage as a business or digital signage as a technology?
20 years ago, we thought digital signage was going to take off in like a super big way. Everybody was anticipating.
Still waiting for that, by the way.
But now I think we're at the point where there's so many chefs in the kitchen. There are hundreds of platforms. There are so many people doing digital signage, and the lines are
and really quickly, there are so many platforms for the platforms.
Exactly.
Like there are so many, you can go pick out a player, and each player will have 100 to 300 platforms. Go ahead.
And we're all like, even the ecosystem, right? So I have some of my dear friends, because we're a big digital signage company, and some of my great friends are, they're frenemies. Like we love each other on Monday, and then we're enemies on Tuesday because we're going after the same job. But it's not a disciplined marketplace. Lots of freewheeling going on. And so I look at that like when they just said, I wanted to make sure I grabbed that phrase, that they were trying to make it easier for the the SMBs. I wonder if that's the same thing we said when Napster came out as an artist. We're trying to make it easier for people to get their music. I kind of feel like the musician when you make that comment, like, what does that do to where the cheese was moved for us? I just think that it's hard to keep up on that, and relying on a lot of that digital signage, business. Again, you've got some product out there that is really strong at doing some things, and some product that is really weak at doing those things, but strong in others. And I don't know if we're asking for help with how to use the Samsung product. Great that we have one, but that's my own opinion anyway. I feel like that's something we do as integrators to stitch together, and we should do it. We do that well.
Aaron, as a service has been around for a while, especially in the AV industry. We've been talking about it. Where does digital signage as a service fit into that ecosystem
compared to the others on the on this today? As being a end user, my group has always been like very leery of any as a service thing. We're like, we'll take care of it ourselves. But this is one of the ones that actually kind of intrigues me the most, because it is still somewhat of the fringe for AV, because it doesn't fall necessarily under my team directly. It doesn't fall under IT directly. Digital signage on our campus has kind of fallen under each individual department. And then it's kind of, now it's essentially the Wild West. Luckily, we have had a bit of a bringing together to try to come up with a standard, but it still is difficult to manage each of these things separately, and also the content. Essentially, when it's left up to a department where they don't necessarily have someone who's technical, they don't have someone who's going to be a content creator, they don't have someone who can manage it regularly, it'd be kind of nice to be like, well, it'll be cheaper to outsource some of this than to actually have to hire somebody who then is responsible to deal with it all. If there's, if for, schools or businesses that don't already have a person that can fall under, we've got so many things we're doing as it is. Let's push some of it off on somebody else for once.
Joel, you have the last word on this. Where does digital signage fall in the whole, as a service model or the as a service ecosystem?
I mean, it's the as a service model, especially in AV, is still being built out, right? I haven't seen many integration companies or manufacturers really do a whole lot of a total as a service as this. The word came up, and it's interesting that you sent me this article today, Tim, because I read another article about something called subscription fatigue. And subscription fatigue, Aaron, you kind of alluded to it, and I'm saying this, and my CEO is going to hear me saying this, right? Because we're a company that has a subscription, but it's true. People have subscription fatigue. But with that being said, and couldn't find all the details about this specific offering, although people have subscription fatigue, if a subscription is built in the correct way, there's value and people will use that. And when you look at that, I think this is where there is value. Aaron mentioned a couple of the key points, not getting to the detail if they're doing the content build or whatever, but it's a set and forget. They bring it in, you pay, and they monitor it, they maintain it, they make sure it's always going to be there. I don't know if you can actually get a subscription even on your Caterpillar tractors to ensure that they're monitored remotely and they can get those fixed as well. So when you look at that, I think it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. And again, if the value is there, it's important. I think we're going to see it take off. I do feel that in the world, we are going to see a whole bunch of other services come and go with subscription tied to it. And part of that is because they probably didn't value that process right. A lot of investors are saying everything has to go to subscription. That's probably where some of this is coming from. But again, if it's built correctly and it has the value for the customer, and if the manufacturer is willing to listen, I think it's key. What comes with that? Is that the labor and everything? So, I mean, I think it's interesting. I do come from a different perspective because of, where I work, but man, it's impressive. And this VXT stuff, I think brings digital signage to the masses. The content problem, we can play digital signage for people and they're like, where do you get the content? I'm like, yeah, man. So you got to get a guy to do the thing and then she does that and they do. So that does provide an interesting, unique environment there.
I want to add to something you were saying a minute ago, Joel. Like, we're talking about, SaaS and even hardware as a service stuff. I talk to other companies about this a lot too, because we're searching for the best way to sort of build and define the ROI from doing an implementation. Yeah. And I suspect maybe we've been doing it backwards. I don't think there's something positive to come up with to convince somebody to do it, because I think that's easy. I think what we've been missing is defining the negative and where that is. And it can be just as simple as some housekeeping thing with your tax consultant at the end of the year. I look at why is it that it's okay that we were putting fax machines in, that we don't use them anymore, but your copier, nobody ever bought that stuff. You always lease it. You always have an added service model there. Your phone is the same way. But yet somehow when we're talking about our AV technology or digital signage, it kind of does that now. But there's some of the products that we sell just always hit a roadblock, and it's at the end. And I have a feeling it's because somebody decides, well, I didn't done this the same way in the last 10 years, and I don't want to flag something for an audit this year. When I go, suddenly we didn't spend a couple $100,000 on rooms, and now I'm doing a lease, and I just don't want to bring that headache. And I don't know that that's the answer. I'm just saying that there's got to be something there that we've all been chasing the wrong thing to find a way to get it done.
I'm 100% okay with blaming the government and blaming taxes, Bill. I have no problem with that in any way, shape, or form, as somebody who's in the middle of doing his taxes. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. Erin Moran, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you?
Yep. You can always find me on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter at Smirin_off_ice. And also you can catch me monthly on the AVNation EdTech podcast.
Yep. You can also check Erin on stage at Enterprise Connect the 25th through the 27th of March in Orlando. I'll be there as well, but Hetma has a booth as well as a session. So check her out there. Mr. Carroll, thank you, sir.
It's good to see you, Tim. You can reach me at jcarroll@mersive.com or the Joel Carroll on LinkedIn. Definitely be at Infocom as well, milling around here in a couple months. So look forward to seeing everybody while we're there.
All right, very good. Mr. Bonds, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. How do people connect with you, with PTG, or how do they listen to your podcast?
Podcast you can find at The Morning Toast. Just type in PTG, The Morning Toast. And then company-wide, bill.fonz@promotion.tech. And for everything else, I'll be doing a talk at Infocom, possibly two, I think, around generative AI for business use cases in AV company businesses. So you can look that up and please come join.
Yeah, you can register for Infocom and then look up Bill and PTG under the education section. For me, for AVNation, don't follow me on anything because I'm not very exciting. Go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find this program and Aaron's and a whole lot more. Also, I mentioned Enterprise Connect. So by the time this posts, I will be in Orlando for the first of 2 weeks. I'm going to hang out with our friends at Crestron for Crestron's Masters and Modern Work Summit. Then I'll come home to the beautiful Midwest for a couple of days, then go back to Orlando for Enterprise Connect the 25th through the 27th. So if you're going to either, come by, say hey, or if you're going to Enterprise Connect, go by and say Aaron, and then come by me and say hey. So go by the website, if you would, please, all that and more at avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.